As we commemorate the 60th anniversary of the Detroit Walk to Freedom, we want to talk about the church's role in the historic march that featured Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The walk was organized by Dr. King's close friend, Reverend C.L. Franklin of New Bethel Baptist Church, and Reverend Albert Cleage, who's the founder of the Shrine of the Black Madonna. More than 125,000 people took to the streets to take part, making it the largest civil rights demonstration to date. I spoke with the current pastor of the Shrine of the Black Madonna, Bishop Mbiyu Chui, about the walk's connection to the city's religious community. Bishop Chui, welcome back to American Black Journal.
Thank you. Glad to be back.
Yeah. So this is a big year, lots of big celebration of the 60th anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King's visit to the city of Detroit and the march down Woodward, his deliverance of an early version of his I Have a Dream speech in downtown. You know, one of the things that I think gets lost sometimes when we talk about that visit and that march and that event is the role that the religious community here played, not only in putting the march together and making sure it would happen, but in framing the event and framing the discussion about the event. The civil rights movement was a religious movement, and I think we should always keep that in the front of our minds, and this event is a reminder of it.
Absolutely, Stephen. I think that's a great point that you're making, because a lot of times, because of history, and I think also because of who's telling the story, that gets disconnected. And the backstory to the Detroit Walk to Freedom, I don't think many people know. You know, they don't know that the catalyst that really sparked the march was the turning point that year in 1963 when the event happened in Birmingham, and Bull Connor turned water hoses and dogs on Black women and children. And that sparked outrage all across the country. And Detroit organized a protest. It was CORE, the Congress for Racial Equality, organized a protest downtown Detroit, and it wasn't a good turnout, wasn't a good showing. And the people who did show up were kind of disgruntled because more people should be upset about this, but it wasn't a big turnout. And so ultimately, Reverend Cleage got up to speak, and he said, we got to do better than this. We got to, it should be thousands of people here. And that's really what sparked the Detroit Walk to Freedom. They began to organize. He got together with Reverend C.L. Franklin, and they started having meetings in churches across the city. So the church was at the center of this whole process. And they started planning and strategizing. They got Tony Brown on board. They decided to make Martin Luther King the figurehead of come lead the march. So they're very strategic in planning these events, and the result was the Freedom Walk. That kind of set the precedent, I think, for what protests can and could look like at that time, and then it became the gold standard for the future. Detroit kind of showed people what's possible. When we put our voices together, we can make an impact.
Yeah. So you are the pastor of the Shrine now, and of course, Reverend Cleage was the original pastor of the Shrine. I also think that gets obscured a little when we talk about things like the civil rights movement, is the role of Black nationalism, the assertion of Black independence sometimes gets pushed aside in favor of other messages. Here you had Reverend Cleage working with C.L. Franklin to bring people together around the idea of this march and Dr. King's appearance. But talk just a little about the Shrine and its role in the civil rights movement, and the role of that more radical vision of Black existence here in all of that, in the event itself, and of course in the movement.
Dr. King represented one face of civil rights. There were many other voices and faces that were involved in the civil rights era from different facets of our community. And Reverend Clegg was a visionary, so he was able to kind of bring all of those voices together, and he opened the doors. Then we were the Central Congregational Church, and so he opened the doors for those voices to be heard. Mm-hmm. So the shrine was a gathering place for many voices during the civil rights era and beyond. So people came to organize. You know, we had several different. I joined the shrine as a kid. I was 15 in 1971. But it was my home church as a smaller child when I was 5, 6, 7. I lived right there on Hogarth, so it was my home church even as a kid. And the shrine was always a place in the community where people could come and allow their voices to be heard. And Reverend Clegg was the type of leader that did not shy away from agitating voices and rational voices, and he embraced all of it, and he was not afraid to create that kind of platform where people could come together and organize, even if they weren't of the same religious faith. So he looked beyond denominationalism and all those things to understand the bigger picture and what we need as a community. And so he embraced the political side of it, the economic side of it, the social justice side of it, all of it. And he pushed that agenda from the pulpit.
Yeah. So let's talk a little about the commemoration this year, the things that are happening, and the role the religious community is playing in all of that. There again, it's right in the middle of making sure that we not only remember this, but remember the right things about it. Remember that this was about struggle, that this was about protest, that this was about pushing America to be different and to treat African Americans really differently.
Yeah. So that again, that the Black church has always been the moral voice of not just Black America, but America, period. Right. And calling, speaking truth to power, and calling those in authority to the carpet about these kinds of issues. And not only that, the Black church has been the catalyst for so many non-religious organizations in our community. Even going back to the Detroit Freedom Walk, that spawned the Detroit Council for Human Rights and so many other organizations that were in the city of Detroit and that were prominent in terms of representing our issues, needs, problems on some local level. So the church has always been the center, again, of just bringing our people together in the community and opening its doors to the kind of activities that can bring about some action. So not just being a moral voice, but also creating opportunities for action to take place that can change our collective reality as a people.
As the leader of the Shrine now, I'd love to hear what you think. All of those challenges, all of those responsibilities and obligations for the Black church, what they look like now, and especially what they look like now in Detroit. We're just a few summers from, the explosion of the Black Lives Matter movement. Yeah. So much of that was very critical in Detroit, and it looked different here than it did other places. I wonder what you make as we celebrate this 60th anniversary of what we're facing now and what the challenge and the call is.
Great question. I think the challenge is that we raise up a new generation who can understand programmatic struggle, that things like racism and injustice and inequality are not going to be erased overnight, that it takes protracted effort and struggle and organization and mobilization of skills and energy and resources and all those things. It's the other side of protest has to be programmatic action. And if those two things aren't coming together, then protest is just senseless. It's not going to lead to anything. It's not going to transform anything. People in power don't give up their power because somebody protests. So there has to be some programmatic action that can lead to programmatic change, that can lead to transformation, real transformation. So I think it's about getting that training to our young people and helping them to understand what the past has done, the avenues and doors it's opened that we can take advantage of today to continue the struggle in this generation. Every generation has a particular responsibility to address the issues of their time in their way. So it's a matter of supporting and mentoring those young people whose voices need to be heard, and to guiding and directing them with the resources and support they need to get their voices heard.
Yeah, I was really struck during the summer of 2020 and the real emergence of the Black Lives Matter movement by how much it was shaped here in Detroit by young people. The number of young people, and particularly young African American women, who stepped forward and really pulled that together and made it into a movement. I wonder what you see when you look at young people here in the city and how they're stepping up to that call.
Yeah, we actually opened our doors to the Black Lives Matter movement. We gave them a room to meet in at one of our buildings. So we're kind of on the ground with them in terms of helping them organize and plan, and having those opportunities, I think, is critical, and keeping a open mind and trying to help understand what young people feel are the needs and the issues that they want to address, and then supporting them, like I said, in the effort to do that. And it is as many ways as we can do that, whether it's culturally, whether it's economically, whether it's socially, whether it's helping them to build networks and just getting behind them, because they're the ones who have to really fight this fight. We've done our part. All we have to do now is to pass it down to the next generation and make sure that they're prepared to take on the challenges that they have to confront.
Are we winning? And that's an oversimplification, I know, of a very complex question. But I think it's hard to sometimes see progress and note that it's actual progress, but it's also hard to take in the things that remind us of how far we still have to go.
Yeah.
And so anniversaries like this, I think, are an opportunity to think about how far we've come, and how far we still think we want to get.
Yeah, it's complex. You take one step forward and then you turn around and it seems like you're going backwards. Well, life is full of complex ideas, issues, problems, needs. And so it's really about a balancing act, knowing that for every step you take forward, there's going to be pushback. And so there has to be a regrouping and a regathering. And I think that's what any anniversary affords us, the opportunity to regroup and redirect our energies and our efforts to see how we can continue the forward progress. So, it's again about endurance and being willing to fight the good fight.
Okay, Bishop Chui, it's always great to have you here on American Black Journal, but it's especially great to have you here in our city and at the helm of the Shrine, which is such a critical institution for all the things that we're talking about. So I really appreciate you coming by.